This week, the FUT Economist joins me, Ben, for Team of the Season La Liga, whether it's FUT or FUT, market thoughts, and of course, what you're really here for, FIFA 18 chat. Hello and welcome to week 38 of FUT Weekly, or is it FUT Weekly? There's been quite a lot of debate across Twitter, mainly originating from the YouTuber and former EA employee, Chuboy, who sort of pointed out that he thinks many people pronounce it wrong. And with me, we've got a man who's American who maybe can help with why there's a bit of confusion over the pronunciation of FUT. It's Jamie. Hello, Jamie.
Hey, Ben. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. So if you don't know already, Jamie is at FUT_economist on Twitter. And we're going to be talking a lot about FIFA 18 today. But before we get into it, why don't we try and work out this thing about FUT or FUT? What have you seen on Twitter about this? What are people saying?
Well, I mean, there's as you said, Chuboy has sort of speared this debate, if you will, and he put up a poll asking if it's pronounced FUT or FUT. And the results of that poll, he got quite a few votes. A lot of people retweeted. I think he got something like 25,000 votes on it, and it ended up being it was essentially 50-50. I think FUT won like by 1% or something, small like that. So, and I think you had an interesting perspective on like sort of the replies to that, because a lot of people were saying that FUT, like the two options that he gave, were apparently pronounced the same way to certain people.
So it was confusing because essentially he was getting loads of replies saying, but FUT and FUT are pronounced the same. And obviously, to most Americans and to Southern Englanders, like myself, they're not pronounced the same. But I was chatting with at Lambo Matt from Footstock, because he's from the north. And what I realised is the reason why so many people, and Chuboy kind of couldn't believe it, were saying FUT and FUT are pronounced the same, is because in Northern accent, I'm not going to try and impersonate a Northern accent here, but I'll sort of roughly explain that if you were like from like somewhere like Yorkshire, the UT sound is the same as an OOT sound.
Right.
It's not exactly the same. There's like slight differences, but you wouldn't really necessarily notice it. So that basically means that a lot of people have kind of assumed that they're the same, and therefore there's kind of no confusion for them in their eyes that it doesn't matter. But to people from the States, or Canada, like Chuboy is, that's obviously going to be quite an obvious difference. And in fact, some of the developers, Tyler Blair, one of the developers, was pointing out that it definitely is pronounced FUT, like cut or hut, which makes sense.
Right.
But I have to say that I've always had it FUT because, first of all, some of the developers or original people who sort of established Ultimate Team originally were from the north and probably said this, made it sound like it was the same word.
Right. Yeah, and I think a lot of I hear people even in the States will say FUT at times. I think part of the reason is because some of the major influencers in the community are from, the north, and
yeah, I mean, you've got people like Bates in 87, and then also a guy that I remember watching very early on. But Sam 5000, I used to do some of the very early Road to Glories, and I'm pretty sure he was from the north. In fact, I think he was, and would have said FUT or FUT. So that's probably the reason. I'm blaming him basically if he's listening. But yeah, so it's kind of an interesting debate. Obviously, it doesn't really matter that much, but it's always interesting to get into the linguistics of it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess the conclusion is it is FUT.
Yeah.
It's not. It shouldn't be FUT. I mean, it depends on where you're from, whether or not that matters. The difference in that pronunciation. But it's like cut, but with an F in front of it.
Yeah. Exactly. So, but whether I'll actually get around to delivering this in a different way every week, considering I've been saying it FUT Weekly, I don't think anyone's even mentioned it. So we might just continue doing it wrong until anyone tells us off. But what is important at the moment is, of course, FIFA 18, which is we've had quite a lot of information actually. I thought that we wouldn't see too much from EA. We certainly didn't last Monday, so I'm glad we didn't wait to put out the podcast. In fact, because that would have been a little bit of a waste of time. But we have seen quite a lot yesterday on Saturday evening, through revealed by EA at EA Play, and then also revealed by people like Tom from Foothead, who went and play the game. So he's produced a piece on his thoughts on playing it, which you can find at foothead.com or through the YouTube, which is just the Foothead YouTube channel. So that's really worth a read. But and I think you're going to put out a video which kind of is like everything we know so far, which would be really good later on.
Yeah, just sort of a conglomeration of, all the opinions about, from players that have played the game. Obviously all the cut and dry sort of, very carefully worded and marketed, descriptions of the new features that they're adding, and then sort of digging into what those sort of mean, like in terms of actual gameplay and how it's going to affect the game, and which is what we're going to do a little bit here, I suppose. So
yeah, I think
that was sort of weird.
What we sort of said was, we'll have a chat about it, give some opinion, but we won't go into too much detail in terms of, the intricacies.
Yeah, let me redo that last part. That was really odd. And plus my dad bumped it outside my door.
Cool.
All right, where's my lead in? It was like, yeah, okay. Yeah, I've sort of done a sort of a bit of a scavenger hunt and sort of accumulated all of the information that we know about FIFA 18 into sort of what's going to be a very like sort of cut and dry, just sort of informational video about like everything we know, including the very carefully marketed and worded releases by EA. And what I think we're going to do here is focus more on the sort of how that's going to affect the gameplay, sort of our opinions about that kind of stuff.
And obviously neither of us have played the game, but you've chatted to a friend of yours, or a virtual friend of yours, who
virtual friend
who has played it, and we know from Tom, as I was saying, a bit about how the gameplay is looking this year, beyond what EA have said, of course. So I mean, why don't we sort of jump straight into what they've kind of well, first of all, I think it's worth mentioning that the way EA are playing this is this has been the first year on the new Frostbite engine. Is that correct? Is it called Frostbite?
It is called Frostbite, yeah. So FIFA 17 was their first year, and now this is their sort of second year, their sophomore year.
It's been very, very smooth transition. If you compare this to previous games where you saw, there were sort of so many videos going around in the first year of, I think it was Ignite, the one before. There were so many videos of like terrible collisions, like people flying off the like pitch, and just bizarre things going on. And this year has, I have to say, been very smooth on that front. Yeah. If you watch a lot of the replays, though, you do see players' feet going through each other quite a lot, which is something they'll probably look to iron out. But I think they kind of removed some of the visual kind of restrictions in favor of it.
Right.
The physics working slightly better, so that's kind of I think benefited them. But in terms of this being the second year of that engine, animations looks like it's going to be quite a big thing, that they're adding a lot of animations to this new engine.
Yeah, one of the biggest things that they were stressing in their interviews and in their sort of official releases was that they were focusing a lot this year on fluidity, and the way that they said that they were going to do that was in FIFA 17 we have animations that are triggered every time a player takes a step. So each step that a player takes has the potential to have a new animation be made, or continue along the same animation path. What they're doing now, though, in FIFA 18, is that every new frame, and I think it's going at 60 frames per second, every new frame has the potential to trigger a new animation, which is a pretty big deal in terms of what you can do with dribbling, what you can do with defending, how quickly they should respond to passing, how quickly they should respond to inputs like a shot input or a tackle input, and so sort of what I've heard is that that's going to affect like two major aspects. Obviously the first is like 1v1 situations. So when the player is attacking and dribbling, it's going to be much easier to sort of do these little cadences in your dribbling where you can sort of cheek in and out, and to counter that, they have more responsive defenders now. So especially the guys that are very agile, sort of what you would notice in FIFA 17 is someone like Smalling, for all of his positives, sometimes he'll get caught in this animation where he'll take one step one way, and because he's not sort of the most athletic guy, he has a tough time turning around, and before you know it, the defender, or the attacker rather, has breezed by you. But what they're saying this year is because you can trigger new animation every frame, that there's going to be the defenders like Smalling will be more responsive in their ability to change direction. And then the other thing that like I was mentioning, it's much more responsive to inputs like shots and passes and tackles. So something that people noticed was that it was very easy to it was easier to play tiki-taka style, especially around the box where there's a lot of defenders, and then pass it into the box and then get a quick shot off. Whereas in past FIFAs, it was really difficult to receive the ball and take a shot, even with some of the best strikers in the game, because there was this sort of loading animation that would happen. And it was very difficult to get a shot away. So
and I think that one of the really key things in terms of, especially around build-up play, you were saying, is one of the most frustrating things I think I've found this year, and you were saying the same just before we started recording, is when you approach the edge of the box, if you slow down the play, you'll often just end up with like a clump of their players behind the ball, between you and the goal, and then you're there with maybe one or two of your players behind you, and if you try and pass it back, it will just get intercepted, and the way that the animations were working for that, it was really not an option to pass back. It was too dangerous almost. And also the fact that you just couldn't feed anyone in that situation, even though there was a little bit of space for players to operate. They weren't intelligent enough to like realize where they should be, and they were really kind of wasted situations, if you like, which really didn't benefit like possession style play.
Right. Yeah, it definitely favored counterattacking, sort of shoving it down the middle, hoping for a through ball that sort of glitched out a center back or caught a center back out of position, and having quick strikers run behind, which is it's a style of play. It's definitely it makes it interesting to watch, certainly for someone like the pro guys when you're watching them do end to end kind of stuff. But I don't think it's as rewarding as a style of gameplay. I'm looking forward to some of the features that they're going to be adding, like with this animation thing. They're also sort of to add on to this this new fluidity and be able to create attacks closer into the box. They're adding something called hive mentality, where it's going to make it so that players, it's sort of what they did last year, is they really focused on individual player intelligence when it came to their positioning and their run and chance creation. And that was all well and great. It made it so that, in general, players were a bit more intelligent, especially when the AI was playing against the AI. It seemed much more realistic than it had in previous titles. But the problem is they didn't really do a great job of adapting to user input. So, for example, if I'm playing in a back line and I pull out Kyle Walker, as I often do, to have him go run into the middle and sort of try and make the tackles if my CDM's out of position, my back line never really adjusted to that. And if someone made a run onto the right where Kyle Walker was supposed to be, but I pulled him out of position, I was caught completely open. So what they've done this year is they've added, as I said, hive mentality. So the players are supposed to be more aware of their positioning on the field and sort of the breakdown in formations. And there in an interview with on that they did on Twitch, one of the developers said that a CDM or a left winger or whoever is supposed to move back into that position to fill that left back spot. It shouldn't be Kyle Walker, Marcus Alonso, for example. Walker's not on the right or the left rather. To fill that position instead of just leaving it open, which is a lot better, I think, in terms of gameplay and just general realistic sort of stuff in the game. But then also with high mentality on the flip side of things, on the offensive side of things, it's the teammates are going to be more aware of the runs that everyone on the field is making. Oftentimes you'll see that your two strikers will be both making sort of diagonal runs away from you at the same time. Which is sort of annoying because if you're just running at the the defense and you really have no one to pass to other than just a long ball, it limits your attacking options. So what they've done is they've said that there's always going to be at least one player that's going to be showing in a supporting role, which is going to allow obviously for more timed, thoughtful build-up play. And then there's always going to be one person running off in diagonal.
I mean, something like that just sounds like quite basic, is exactly the kind of thing that this game has been missing. I mean, the amount of times you just find yourself in a situation where you're like, okay, there's this space behind me, but there's nobody there. Like, I'm just on my own here. There's nothing I can do. Finally, you might be able to kind of work the play much better, and we'll see less of the kind of counter-attacking style that we've seen so much this year, hopefully. Hopefully, yeah, that would be a welcome change. Yeah, exactly. At least, I mean, it's not even just about like more tiki-taka or anything like that. It's just about like making sure there are multiple ways you can be successful, I suppose. And I think having multiple ways of being successful will up the skill gap. Like if there's always going to be a way to counter whatever player style someone's going to have, but the way that I see the pros being really, really good
is by being unpredictable in their play style and varying
Mm-mm.
you know the style that they're playing. So if one attacking move you're very conservative in your passes and sort of thoughtful in your build up play, but then the next attack you're very aggressive and you look for a through ball right away. I think that's going to heighten the skill gap, which is something that I think if FIFA wants to be competitive esport is something that they need to do.
Yeah, and that actually leads on quite nicely to talking about team styles is something that may not be appropriate to Ultimate Team, but we're not kind of sure yet. And do you want to sort of talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, so it's interesting. They mentioned that this year they've put quite a lot of focus in on studying the different styles of teams. They really want to. One of their sort of core pillars was that they were looking at personality. And personality, we're going to talk about player personality eventually, but right now we're talking about team personality. So they said that there's 5 different types of attacking styles and 5 different types of defending styles that were going to be available for each team. The attacking styles were tiki-taka, long ball, counterattack, dribbling and crossing, and then the 5th was like a more generic mix of the above. And then the defending styles were, I'm going to pronounce this incorrectly, Cantanaccio, harass, double contain, the turtle. And for those that don't know, the turtle is everyone stays back, and I think it's a more conservative defensive style. And then a more generic mix, as before, a more generic mix of all of those. And they said that it was going to be especially prevalent and important in career mode. And that makes sense. Sort of crafting and creating your team's style with the players that you have is obviously something that any real life manager would do, and I think would be a huge step forward if that was something that was very important or like you had to do well in order to perform well in career mode. Really, career mode right now is something that's predominantly it's dominated by finding the best young prospects, which you can really just do by Googling the highest potential whatever. So
yeah, no, I think that would add definitely kind of another layer to it. Do you think in terms of Ultimate Team, could we see it? Maybe, I don't know, one of the drop down kind of options for custom tactics maybe, but
it's interesting because I mean you have custom tactics already, and you have counterattack and long ball already, and you can basically make yourself play tiki taka by adjusting the passing and the chance creation type, and you can even adjust things like how often your players open themselves up for positions to take shots, or how they position their bodies when they're in certain amounts of space if they are in a shooting position. So I'm curious to see how they implement that into Ultimate Team. I think there's definitely room for those defensive styles to come in. I don't think there's much customization in terms of your defensive styles. But yeah, no, it'd definitely be interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if those were preset things. If they added Tiki Taka as one of the preset things. I don't think that's something that we have now, or Cantanaccio or harass or double contain is some of the things you could do now. Yeah. Although you were mentioning that Cantanaccio was sort of an interesting throwback.
I think Cantanaccio isn't really now what it used to be, but Cantanaccio used to be a style of defending where you'd have a sweeper. It's predominantly an Italian technique, so that would be pretty interesting. I mean, you were saying that just before we came on air that you used to play sweeper yourself.
I did used to play sweeper, yeah, in American football.
Was that an actual soccer or?
Yeah, I mean it was high school soccer. It was our high school team. I used to play sweeper for them.
One of the reasons why sweepers aren't so effective is obviously because there is offside. So playing an offside trap is slightly more difficult, which obviously at lower kind of level, no offense, mate, you're obviously gonna be able to play a offside trap less effectively. So the sweeper comes into play because he can kind of clear up if anyone breaks through the defensive line. But nowadays you see it kind of in a 3-back formation. So David Luiz is kind of a sweeper to an extent. At least he has a bit more freedom than a standard centre back. I used to use sweepers in FUT before they changed the. Now you can't adjust positions of players within the team management in game. But I used to sometimes, against players who were playing through the middle a lot, I used to move my CDM into sweeper. But anyway, that was quite effective actually in stopping people who were constantly trying to kind of through ball because the
Right.
sweeper would come across and cover it.
Yeah, it's a great counter for the 4-1-2-1-2
Yeah,
counterattack down the middle.
Exactly, it was really good. So it was a bit of a shame they removed that actually, and it was quite funny because people just didn't know about it, so they'd be really shocked like seeing this guy like hanging out around the back just cleaning everything up for you. But in terms of it actually working, it may not actually be just Cantanaccio as in with a sweeper. It may be Cantanaccio is kind of also just quite a rugged defensive style where you I mean, it means something like bolted door in Italian. So, but there's got to be a way of differentiating that from the turtle, whatever it's called. So it's not just part of the bus, I guess.
Interesting.
So we've talked about team styles, but you hinted earlier that player personality might also be a thing. What have we got on that front?
Yeah, so there's sort of 2 tiers of player personality that they're going to be adding this year, and I think they sort of did the first tier last year. And the first tier is that they're going to be they do the player mapping, so they put the guys in those big jumpsuits and have little sensors all over their body, and they have them run around and do different physical exercises so they can motion capture them and put them in the game. They did that for a couple of their marquee players last year, like Martial, Royce, who's the other one, James Rodriguez. They had them motion capture, so they have their free kick styles and all that kind of stuff, and they're doing that this year with some of the marquee players and some of the more interesting players. In terms of their body movements. One example that they gave was Raheem Sterling and his rather infamous running style. Ronaldo, obviously, he's the cover boy, so they've got his rather unique running style with his straight arms and robot-like sort of
terrible techniques, isn't it?
Cadences. Yeah, it's not great, but he's quick. Something's working.
Yeah, it does seem to work for him. Yeah.
But yeah, so they're going to have that sort of level of player personality, and they said that depending on how those players were mapped into the game was going to dramatically affect how they performed in game. One example that they gave was that Lionel Messi, they've always said that they made the reference that Lionel Messi in past games, one of the hardest things that they had to do was figure out how to play put Lionel Messi into the game, because I mean anyone who's played with Lionel Messi will know that apart from his team of the year, none of his cards play anything like him in real life. Some of the stuff that he can do in real life just doesn't make sense. And what they've done this year, and they've said that Messi feels like Messi. He burst off the line very quickly. He's extremely difficult to take the ball from, and someone like Iniesta is the same way. They said the quote was that the players like that would be very good at hiding the ball. I don't know what that means. I don't know if that's a sort of a nod to like a different
up the shirt
feature or up the shirt. There you go. But I don't know if that's going to make it more difficult for defenders to tackle him or what.
I imagine it's that thing of like them getting the ball very close to their body when they dribble, which makes it really hard to tackle. I think some players do it slightly now, like obviously as you're saying, Team of the Year Messi, but like Mertens is someone who seems to have the ball quite close to him. But maybe they're just going to exaggerate that, and sort of with this new animation system, I guess it'll allow them to hone in on that a bit more.
Sort of speed up. I think with the new animation system it would make sense that the players with high agility, high dribbling would be able to make more quicker sort of like movements. I mean, you can sort of do that now with FIFA 17, but it looks like they're literally glitching. Like you'll see like someone like Mertens, for example. I posted a video a while back on my Twitter where Mertens like literally took 3 touches while the ball was in the air, and it just looked like he was glitching, but it was really just me flicking the left stick a lot because I was just trying to confuse the guy with LTRT dribbling. Hopefully with the new animation system that'll look like it's actually happening in real life, not just teleporting through his foot. But then the second level of player personalities they're calling is they're adding 6 different player archetypes to the game. So there's going to be tall, short, and medium, for height wise, and then there's going to be stocky and thin or athletic, I think they're calling it. I don't think they're calling it thin. So 3 times 2, you can have 6 different archetypes. You can be, for example, tall and thin, tall and stocky, medium, and etc.
It's a bit like with pro players, you can pick like whether you're stocky or lean or like what height.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, that's exactly what I thought of when I heard that. And what they said is that that's going to make a difference in how that player performs in game. Not that it already doesn't already, which sort of confused me. Like someone like Shaqiri, for example, he's short and stocky, is definitely different than Mertens. But maybe that's more down to their stats and their strength stats. But I guess like the stock player is going to have like a different personality, as they call it, than the what they had in years past. And one example that they used to sort of picture what it meant to have different player archetypes was this iteration of FIFA, you'll see if someone like Hummels and Messi are running alongside of each other, they'll be taking the same number of strides as they're running after the ball, which looks a bit silly because obviously someone like Messi should be taking far more strides than Hummels, who's going to have like long, colossal like strides. But this coming year in FIFA 18, they've said that there's going to be a difference in the number of strides. So while that's that isn't exactly what's going to be affecting gameplay, because they'll still be running quickly and that's sort of the same speed that they would normally, it sort of gives you an idea of the level of effect that these new archetypes are going to have. It's affecting the animations, and smaller legs, smaller strides equals more touches, etc., etc.
And also that is an interesting point in terms of, with all these increased every frame you're going to could get a new animation kind of thing. That combined with the fact that players with like shorter legs are going to make fewer more strides, potentially means those players can like make movements so much quicker, and do other animations to go around people, etc., that you wouldn't be able to do with, say, like a bigger player, even if they have excellent dribbling like Ronaldo or something.
Yeah. I imagine players like Isco and Iniesta are going to sort of see a revival. In this iteration of FIFA, Isco and Iniesta are pretty bad.
Yeah.
Even their highest rated cards are pretty awful because they're just too weak. But I imagine just someone with incredible dribbling stats like that would be pretty effective, and combine that with like their short stature would make them
then hopefully
more effective.
The whole hive mentality thing sees better passing, and that being more important. So it could be pretty important. Although this goes back to an old thing that we always say these things, and then at this kind of time of the year, and whether it comes out in the wash by the time we get to the game, it's
you've got to take all of this with a grain of salt, because we can get as hyped as we want, and one thing that they also do is they tend to boost the effectiveness, and you can sort of liken it to sliders. They sort of boost the effectiveness of certain sort of like marketable new features that they're having. One example, and I think we're about to talk about this, is they have this thing that they're stressing this year called flair for the dramatic, where they I think it was Matt Pryor, I think his name was, or Ryan Pryor.
I think it's Matt Pryor. Yeah.
I don't know.
He's the guy that I was talking about earlier, who sort of founded FUT.
Yeah. He was talking about how they want to emphasize how dramatic the real life game can be, and the guys that I was talking to, Matt, my friend, and then the guys over at Foothead were talking about how long shots were ridiculously overpowered. They said that like 80% of the goals that they scored were from long shots. So you can sort of imagine that is something that they're sort of stressing right now, the flair for the dramatic. But as we get closer to the actual release, into the demo and then into the actual release, I would imagine that stuff like that's going to be toned down.
So another thing that looks interesting from a more kind of gameplay perspective, we've got a lot of changes to crossing this year, which is interesting because only a week or so ago we were talking about how ineffective wing players and everyone plays down the centre. And I was thinking about this, and I think one of the key reasons for that is actually the lack of options when you're in wide areas.
Right.
In games past, especially when headers were quite OP, obviously your opponent was desperately worried you were going to whip a cross into probably Mandzukic back then to power it home, and so that for that reason they were kind of much easier to beat on the dribble out wide, because they were always aware that that's not a possibility, and that has really kind of the only thing you can do now out wide is cut in and try and take a shot, which, because the way defending works, which we discussed, is really hard to do. And then the fact that you could kind of put in a ground cross, but you could only, I guess it was normally a driven pass from out wide, and that required you to be quite close to the person you're passing it to.
Right.
And that means that when you're in the wide positions, if you like, you're kind of really limited in terms of what you could do. It was really easy to defend you. So the idea that they're sort of going to improve crosses or give you more options is a real kind of plus for those who like wing play. Yeah,
I'm definitely a fan of it. They said that there's going to be obviously more, as you said, more options when it comes to crossing. They're going to have a whipped to the spot cross, a arching delivery, and a ping to the back stick cross, as they described it on their website. So, and then in the interview, Matt Pryor was talking about how crossing was going to take on sort of a different dynamic this year, and that it was going to take a lot more skill to pull off a good cross. One with the attributes of the player, is going to dramatically affect how good the cross was going to be. And that's something that happens in FIFA 17. That's not unique to 18. But the amount of space that you worked for yourself, and then, obviously how you aim it and who you're aiming it to is going to be a big factor. And then I think that's a good thing, as you said, in general, because I think it adds a different dynamic to gameplay. I mean, really, in FIFA 17, crossing the ball from anywhere, but an RBA across the middle is really just a lottery.
Yeah.
And I think that's just sort of when stuff like that, when it really just feels completely random, is frustrating to get scored on. Something like corners, for example, is something really frustrating to get scored on because it's like just a random cross that just comes across the middle.
And they're also going to make it so that you can trigger a triple tap or low cross more easily, I think. So it's going to be like a double tap or RB square or RBX, or is it R1 square? Yeah. So that will make it slightly sort of easier to do those, and maybe means that the sort of ground pass from out wide is going to be slightly less effective, and that's going to be what you do instead, if you like.
Right.
And one of the things
we could see we could see the return of the 4-3-3.
Yeah.
And its dominance, and sort of moving away from that 4-1-2 into just sort of arrowhead formation down the middle could add some variation to gameplay, which is good.
I really hope that EA have seen that, the kind of prevalence of that formation, and EA do collect data on those things. Like, I know they do.
Yeah.
So they'll be keeping an eye on sort of what's being kind of considered OP and trying to make things slightly more balanced. So hopefully that will be the case next year. There are plenty of players who can use those formations effectively, but they certainly don't feel like they have in previous years. Not that they were kind of overpowered in previous years, but they were just had that much more to them. And actually, what you say about the importance of having space when delivering a cross, that's kind of interesting, because it could mean that people desperate to block the cross are going to dive in on you, and you're going to be able to go around them.
Yep.
Just that alone would make me like FIFA 18 a lot more, because in terms of doing skills out wide, it's just been a pretty bogus year for that kind of play. So hopefully that's an improvement. And also, I think it'll be great to just see what their kind of way that they compensate for the sort of narrow attacking play we've had all year.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so I guess moving on from there, there's a sort of, now we're on to the miscellaneous section, if you will. There aren't any like big features left to talk about, but there's some interesting things that I think we're rather hopeful about. We've had in the past where you can make substitutions without going to a pause screen by using your Connect. It's always been a bit buggy, but you can you can sort of do it if you're really hell bent on doing it in the online single player, and I think, can you do it in online seasons?
I'm not sure.
I don't think you can't do it in Ultimate Team.
You can't do it in Ultimate Team, and I assume maybe you can't do it in seasons for that reason, but I'm not sure.
But yeah, so the guys over at FUT were talking about how there is a new substitution system that could be triggered by using the R1 when the ball was out of play or stopped, and you could trigger one of 3 preset substitutions. So I'm hoping, and I think we have different opinions on this, I'm hoping that you'll be able to make some sort of custom tactical substitution very early in the game to sort of get away from the immediate pausing that you have to do at the beginning of every game. I run a formation in a team where I play Vieira at cam for chemistry. And that's obviously something I don't want to do. So if I could have a immediate substitution that triggers at kickoff, instead of having to pause the game, go into the pause menu, making the switch, I think that could be something that streamlines my play. But I know you have a different sort of opinion on those sorts of substitutions.
It's kind of like an overall thing that I just don't. I just think that the whole thing of like pausing and changing the team to any extent just feels kind of slightly like it kind of negates the chemistry system to an extent.
Yeah, it sort of feels like arcadish, if you will.
Yeah, and I understand it to an extent. I mean, teams do in real life switch formation quite early on in the game sometimes, just because they've seen something. But it doesn't really happen that much, and it's really slightly jarring to go in and then someone pause it. But maybe this is good that you'll be able to do that. But I don't think it will be changing formation or switching player position. I think it will just be substituting a player in. And for me, that also suggests that you'll get a lot of people, because it's so easy now, you'll get a lot of people playing a bronze in strike and then subbing in a player off the bench. You can imagine now with the people with their kind of SBC Son trying to get him in through a quick substitution at the start of every game. But another thing though to add to that is, at least in this iteration of the game, on Reddit someone's done a lot of research into substitution chemistry, and it looks like players do only get 5 chemistry when they're subbed on, which at this stage of the game with players with such high base stats it's less of a problem, but that is meaning you're basically getting no boost from chemistry at all. And at the early stages of next game it's possible that actually that won't be as effective just because the players that you sub on shouldn't really feel that great.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That could be a big deal going to the next iteration.
Yeah, and it's an interesting discussion. And if you're interested in any of the stuff, new stuff for FIFA 18, do get in contact, and we'll probably chat about it again in future post or mail sections in future weeks. So we'd love to hear your thoughts. I think we've only got a couple more things to go through on FIFA 18. One of the things actually was the penalty system. It looks like it hasn't changed much from this year.
Yeah, apparently the penalty system, infamous penalty system of FIFA 17, has apparently not changed. It is the same mechanic with the no arrow. There's supposed to be no arrow. There's supposed to be no sort of like aim guidance. And it's like the same sort of deal with aiming, but apparently you don't have to trigger the run up with the left stick anymore. Apparently it's just aiming. And they've said that they're going to be more forgiving with the aiming in general. But then they sort of countered that, oddly enough, by saying that there's going to be more dependent on the skill level of the player. So, a fullback is going to have a less chance of, finding the corner, whereas a seasoned striker is going to be able to slide in the corner a higher percentage of the time.
I think that's kind of a fair point in a way, because actually penalties have felt for a long time quite a pointless stat. I mean, even back in the day when penalties worked differently, there was kind of little use to the penalty stat. So maybe it'll be interesting.
It's literally just if you could get it in the green.
Yeah.
And then you were golden. That was pretty much it. But they did not mention the biggest complaint about the penalty system is, of course, the keepers. They are exceedingly frustrating to deal with in the penalty system, to the point where you have to sort of do really silly things with them in order to get them to save the typical penalty shots that are taken, which is just a little bit to the right or the left and then on the ground. You have to have them, in order to save that, you have to move them over to the opposite direction where they think the person's going to take the shot, and then have them make a normal dive to that area of the goal. Which is a completely ridiculous system.
Yeah, it's like one step forward, two steps back kind of. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So hopefully they've noticed that. I think they've definitely heard us loud and clear that penalties are something that the system this year is something that we want fixed a little bit. So hopefully they focused on that in the off cycle. And
again, it's something that I suppose it's the first year of this system, so hopefully they'll work on that. And we'll see something a bit better next year. In terms of, I guess another few bits, there's a new skill move, which is like a roulette, but one-footed. I think that's pretty much all we've seen so far.
That's the best way of describing it, yeah.
Kazooie, who's a skiller who does a lot of YouTube videos and stuff on Twitter, I noticed he was saying that there are quite a lot of new fake shots, variants, which is nice, new animations there, which is always fun. I suppose I would expect there maybe will be another skill move or two to come. Generally you don't just get one, but it's possible. They're starting to fill up with quite a lot of skill moves. There's only so many they can. Yeah,
running out of button combinations.
It'd be nice to see a few of the skill moves, be a bit more effective that aren't the McGeady spin or. I guess it's like I'm trying to think what skill moves have been effective. Obviously, roulette's fairly effective, and the Ronaldo shot, for example, is really ineffective this year, and there's a few others. What we've discussed so far is kind of more about FUT. More about gameplay, not about FUT. And obviously, our thing is generally FUT, and we have got a few little bits and pieces about FUT. Andrew Johnson has emailed about FUT Champions Cup, which we're not quite sure what this is, but it's been something that they've put in their promotions, suggesting that I guess it will be something running alongside Weekend League, where it's kind of like a knockout system rather than a Weekend League system.
I think it's related to the FIFA Interactive World Cup. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it came out under sort of like the FIFA Interactive World Cup, like something to do with that. And they've released a number of things. I guess I don't know what they are, so the best thing for me to do is just sort of read what the description is. They said there's official football league competitions, which is where players will have the opportunity to represent their real life club through official league competitions. I don't know if that's going to be sort of like a tournament where you can say I'm supporting this club. I remember they did a promotion a while back where you could score goals for your club or something like that, and then they whatever club won at the end of promotion got some sort of bonus, I don't know, some sort of upgrade or kit, whatever. And then the thing that he emailed in about was the FIFA Ultimate Team Champions Cups, which is described as open to all eligible players. This mass entry tournament starts with online matchmaking, with top players qualifying for live events this winter and spring. So it sounds like that's going to be something that's running alongside of FUT Champs, maybe?
Yeah, and it's interesting because what I think that will really allow people to do is, and why he's emailed in, is actually because he's saying, well, I don't have time to play a whole weekend league. I don't know how good he is, but if he's an exceptional player, then he's obviously going to be disadvantaged because he's never going to be able to get into a competitive competition because he's never going to be able to play the required number of games to get that kind of, I guess, 38, 40 wins that you need to do that.
Right.
So this would allow people to go through a knockout competition and get into a finals through that.
Yeah, a lot of people were speculating that it could be sort of similar to the Gfinity stuff, where they do like sort of the daily or whatever it is, like weekly tournaments, but they're like shorter, and like a way to get into the competitive scene. Maybe that's something that EA is officially adopting this year, which could be really cool.
Yeah. I mean, I think that could only be positive because so many people are kind of have complained about the amount of games, and maybe that's just a way of getting around that. Although you've got to kind of question what the rewards will be if it's not so many games. Maybe the rewards will be much less desirable, but interesting either way.
Yeah, but I imagine we really haven't heard, to be fair, we really haven't heard much about this, the competitive side of gaming. We really haven't heard anything about Ultimate Team, anything about career mode, anything about pro clubs, etc., etc. So that's really all to come. This is just a very brief sort of generic sort of what they've sort of put out as their headline changes to the game. And we're going to hear most of what we should be, some digging more into that kind of stuff at E3, at Sony Play, at Microsoft press conference. So I imagine we'll get more information at those events coming up.
Yeah, and I think just you got to take the whole thing, as we said, with a pinch of salt, because previous years, things like they said they were going to introduce fake tackling, and that never happened. They said they were going to, this year, crosses would be kind of revolutionised because they were going to put the ball into a dangerous area rather than aiming for players, and that didn't really make a huge difference. So I'm not saying that they haven't implemented these things properly, but the cycle of creating these games is so short, and they're still certainly developing the game as we speak, and it won't be in a finished state. So there's only so much they can do each year, and sometimes things do fall by the wayside a little bit. So I'd just bear in mind that some of these things may not make it into the final build, and even if they do, they may not be quite as effective as they are at this sort of appear at this stage. And we'll have to look to those events that you mentioned to see what kind of they keep plugging as time goes on, because that's normally the things that are most significant.
Right.
Moving on to the final thing, which definitely is in FUT next year. We kind of teased this at the end of last week because, you'd done some digging, and we were sort of mentioning that maybe PlayStation could see Legends next year. And actually, on the following day, it was announced that Legends, or Icons, as they're now being called, would make it onto PlayStation next year.
Yeah, it's very exciting news. The 4-year love affair between Xbox and EA has finally come to an end with the end of the exclusivity contract. So now, as you said, Legends are going to be replaced by Icons. I think because of a naming rights thing, I don't think they're completely changing up what Legends are, but they're going to be called Icons, and they're going to be available on Xbox, obviously, PS4 and PC. So good news for PS4 players especially. I think that's something we've been waiting for a long time. It's going to have definitely effects on the market, which I guess we can talk about in the market section. But they're also adding a number of new Legends into the game. One that we have confirmed already is R9, or as he's sort of derogatorily called, the Fat Ronaldo,
or the Brazilian Ronaldo, if you want to call
the Brazilian Ronaldo. Yeah, that's probably it's probably a more worthy name of his
or even
talents.
better, Ronaldo Nazario, I think is.
Yeah,
if you want to be very polite, but as a Yank, I know that's not kind of thing.
Yeah, so we've been able to confirm that the Brazilian Ronaldo is going to be in the game because he is actually on the cover of the Icon Edition. So he's definitely going to be in the game, and it's sort of interesting. The design for the new Legends is similar to a Team of the Year card, which is just a little tidbit, great.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Great little podcast thing that you can definitely visualize that, right? But yeah, so we're going to get more information on the new Icons in the coming weeks. I definitely imagine that's something they're going to be used to sort of continue the hype train, if you will, by giving incremental releases of new Legends. They said the next one is going to be coming on June 12th. So we're going to be revealed 4 new icons. I would imagine they're going to be pretty big icons, being that they're going to be revealed so early in the cycle like this. I would imagine someone like Henry, Beckham has been rumored. And there's been a quote-unquote leak of the legends that are going to be revealed. So apparently Scholes, and I think like Maldini was on it, Henry was on it, Beckham was on it.
I saw that, because I was thinking, like, because someone was like, "Oh, new legends." I was like, "Yeah, but Maldini and Scholes are both in the game," so I didn't really get it. But I guess because they also had Ronaldinho and etc. etc. But I don't think that was something told me that wasn't right. I think the card designs were the same as this year as well, which didn't really make sense.
Yeah.
So anyway, if they're changing it to icons, does this mean that there's going to be a bit of a revamp? Because I was saying that I'd quite like to see improvements to the stats of legend players.
Right.
Many of them are kind of undervalued in terms of stats. If you compare them to kind of what their ratings were when they were actually in FIFA, when those that were.
Right.
But also now at this stage of the game, there's only about 6 legends that are actually effective.
Right.
Maybe a few more, but it's not a huge amount of them. And it'd be great to see a little bit of a boost to their stats, I think.
Right, yeah. And being that they're adding so many what appears to be high-powered legends, or high-powered icons, I'm going to get used to calling them icons. Someone like R9 is going to be someone that I think is going to be effective for a good portion of the game. So to your point, maybe they're not necessarily upping the stats; they're just adding better players.
Yeah, maybe. And we may see some legends fall by the wayside. I know, in the past we've had legends come out of the game and come into the game, so we could see some move off who are less effective, perhaps. But it is an interesting question, which is, I certainly think that PlayStation legends or icons at the start of the game, or certainly almost the whole of next year, are probably going to be quite expensive, just because there's going to be a lot of hype around those icons. 4 or 5 years of not having the joys of legend cards and everything that brings is obviously going to change. And as we saw on Xbox, price of those cards when they first kind of appear on the console it is kind of disproportionately high, I think.
Yeah, the pricing dynamic is going to be interesting. As you said, there's definitely going to be a novelty for the guys over on PS who have never played with Legends before, and sort of make a prediction about how Legends are going to, or icons rather, are going to affect the prices on PS4, or what they're going to be priced. I would imagine what you see now is that on PS4, the higher end cards are similarly priced on PS4 and on Xbox. The guys like Inform Ronaldo's and the super duper team of the year Messi's are similar in price. But then as you get lower in tier of cards, you'll see that guys like Martial or Conte are much more expensive on PS than they are on Xbox. And I think the reason for that is because you see that Xbox players in general, since it's the console of legends, it's generally been sort of held up as the competitive console. So I think you're gonna have more people that are have a higher amount of disposable income, who are really interested in FIFA, really into FIFA, who are going to be on going to be on Xbox. You're going to see the pros who are going to be making these super teams. They're going to be on Xbox. So you're going to have a higher general demand for Xbox Legends. But when you compare that to PS next year, who are getting icons, what I think is going to happen is the prices of those players in general, unless you see a massive migration of intense hardcore FIFA players from Xbox to PS, I think you're going to see that in general, there's going to be a sort of a leveling of the playing field, and that high-end players over on PS are going to drop, I think, below the prices that they are on Xbox. Whereas Legends are, I think, as you said, are going to stay similar to what they are on Xbox. I think they're going to be, especially the higher end ones are going to be similarly priced just because of the novelty. But the high end informs and other cards, like Team of the Years, Team of the Seasons, are actually going to take a hit in price, and I think going to be significantly lower than what they are on Xbox One, just because there's less competitive environment over on PS. So it's going to be an interesting pricing dynamic, something that I think is going to make it more accessible to the average player on PS, whereas right now it's actually more accessible to make a better team for players on Xbox. So it's sort of an interesting shift in balance shift there.
Yeah, I think overall it's a really positive move. I mean, I know I've heard from, I think it was Chewboy was saying that it was something that they were quite, the development team were quite sad about, the fact that half the kind of players, and maybe even more in fact, weren't going to be able to use Legends because of the exclusivity deal, which was, I think, driven by Xbox's poor sales in the first few months of the release of the console. But anyway, the whole thing overall is obviously a real positive, and quite looking forward to kind of talking about Legends and knowing that I'm not kind of discriminating against a huge proportion of our listeners, and that'll be quite an interesting thing next year. Otherwise, I think we're pretty much wrapped up on FIFA 18. It's all quite positive at this stage. I think the biggest thing for me is they're not looking to overhaul, or there's no kind of jumping at doing kind of the hype. It's not that's not their kind of what I'm seeing in this. It is a concerted effort to make the kind of tweaks and adjustments which should make for a more balanced and kind of improved FIFA 17. And I think people were quite happy with the content offering, and it was all about improving that gameplay, making it feel more fluid and more balanced, and hopefully that's what we'll see.
Hopefully, yeah. That would be a huge step forward. Because, like you said, I don't think they have to reinvent the wheel in terms of their gameplay. I think they're getting closer and closer every year. So, it'd be worrying to see, we're passing is the B button now. Or, if they, completely, changed everything up. I think it'd be worrying. But, as you said, they're sort of tweaking things rather than reinventing.
Yep, positive stuff. I'll probably move on quickly to talking about something which is almost more significant than FIFA 18. Something that we've long looked forward to for many months, or maybe a month. It's the Team of the Week tradable SBC.
Huge deal.
Huge, Jamie.
Yeah, I mean it's finally dropped. I think it's fair to say we've speculated about it every single week since Team of the Season has started. Which is sort of a ridiculous thing. They said that it was going to happen. I don't know why they decided to drop it during La Liga Team of the Season, but it's finally here. The 84 plus Team of the Week guaranteed tradable SBC. It's affected the market in, I guess, a modest way. At this point, prices are going to do what they're going to do in the sense that high end players are going to rise towards the end of the game, as people sort of build their teams and craft their teams. So something like this isn't a huge deal. We have one major shakeup left in the form of the Calcio A or Serie A Team of the Season. I think there's going to be some pretty dramatic fluctuations as people list on their teams after this coming week in league in preparation for buying these Calcio A players and making their super teams. But the short-term effects that we saw from this Team of the Week tradable was that some of the classic players went up a little bit. The higher rated informs that were discard, some of the 83 through 85 rated players saw a little bit of a bump, but there wasn't anything too substantial because honestly not a lot of people are doing it. There's just not a whole lot of reason to. The only people that you really see doing it are people like Golden Bear and Gummy FIFA that just have coins to blow. And are sort of bored and just deciding to do that. Where, I mean, honestly, most people aren't even doing the Team of the League tradable. If they have coins to blow, they're putting it into the La Liga upgrade or the Liga upgrade or whatever it was for that week, because they have a chance of packing a Team of the Week there. I mean, I know that I've done one.
Team of the Season,
Team of the Season, yeah. I know that I've done one. I got Jimenez, so rather disappointing. I think you did two as well. I don't know. How was your luck?
Yeah, that was a bit poor as well. First one was Forsberg, so I was like, that's not bad because he's 86 rated, not terrible. But I just had an absolute mare in the weekend league this weekend. It's been really laggy, really unpleasant. So I thought, why don't I just use some of my untradables, because I had a few Team of the Week untradables, to turn things around. My luck's got to change, right?
You're due.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, drop my untradable Etu in there, drop my untradable player who I can't remember in there. And out pops a 84 rated Modeste. So happy days.
Happy days. And you obviously were extremely excited and put it on Twitter and
I tweeted it.
Hundreds of retweets.
Selfie. It's everywhere. So yeah, I don't think they're really worth it. They seem to not produce very good players. Is my
I mean, honestly, at this point, it seems to be the SBC is available for the next 3 weeks, so it's going to be to the end of Team of the Season. It sounds like it's just, or looks like it's just a market balancing technique, just to make it so that they can squeeze the last bit of real life currency out of the people, because it makes it a little bit more worth it to open up packs. But other than that, it's sort of we're ending the.
Could it also maybe be sweeping up a few players for a future premium SBC or something like that? I know we discussed it last week.
That is an interesting possibility, yes, and I do believe that's definitely something that could be happening. So I've seen people trading in like super high rated players, and this is something that I was actually just at the Team of the Week SBC just before the pod, and you were reminding me not to turn in my 89 rated inform Verratti, because he could be used for a high rated Team of the Week, or not Team of the Week, just sort of any sort of SBC at the end. And I think if we were going to get that, as we said in the previous pod, that it would be coming during the EA Team of the Season. That's sort of the finale of the Team of the Season, if you will. So,
and I'm still, as I said last week, holding out that there may be footies SBCs rather than tournaments, or wait, do we have tournaments for that? Yeah, we did kind of, and rather than them being on the market, but we'll have to see. And in terms of the market, you're kind of seeing quite a move again from the Team of the Season that got released on Friday, suddenly rising in price over this weekend. Well, I suppose I say that there's been rises, but overall maybe it hasn't actually completely kind of taken off to the extent that Premier League's taken off.
Yeah, I mean, it's been interesting. The pattern has been, if there is hype for the team, for the released team, then people pound packs early in the release, and then they rise. That happened in the Premier League. That happened a little bit with the Eredivisie. I completely butchered the pronunciation of that, but that was a pretty good midweek release comparatively. So they actually went really low, and then they rebounded over the weekend. And then it's the same thing for La Liga, where they were low to begin with. I think Griezmann hit like 1.1, 1.2 over the weekend, and now he's at like 1.7, 1.8. I think there's a possibility that you might see the same thing happen with Calcio A, Serie A, because that's going to be a crazy Team of the Season. People, it's the last Team of the Season that people are saving their packs for, and I think there's a possibility that they are going to stay pretty low. And I think one of the other things that's affecting Team of the Season prices is the people winning, or people getting rewarded from weekend leagues with the Team of the Season cards themselves, which is like a pretty big deal. I mean, you saw people packing crazy packs over the weekend. I saw someone with like Lacazette and Cavani Team of the Season in the same Elite 3 pack, which is a ridiculous reward. So what that did on Thursday, League One prices went down, but then obviously people were able to liquidate those things, and they had a huge amount of coins that they could work with. So then they turned around and spent those, and then League One prices went up. And I think you can see sort of a similar cycle where they're low in the week. People get their rewards, they get a lot more coins. After people are done sort of all packed out and they're not opening packs anymore, then they rebound over the weekend as people buy them and then sort of plant them in their clubs and really never have any plans of listing them on again.
And then we've always got to bear in mind, though, that there's going to be that EA Team of the Season coming up at the end, which could actually see people, opening more packs. And to an extent, if you've got packs, it might be worth saving it to then, just because that is a really good Team of the Week. But in terms of Team of the Season, of the Team of the Season packs, they are tied to a specific Team of the Season, aren't they? Or could you open it if people have Team of the Season packs? Could they actually open them in that last EA Team of the Season week and then get like a guaranteed ridiculous Team of the Season play?
I think they're tied to a specific Team of the Season. If I remember looking at it in the code, I think it is tied to a specific Team of the Season. Otherwise, I think everyone would wait till Team of the Season.
Anyway, there's a little bit of an aside. In terms of the market overall, then we're going to see a bit of a rise, possibly over the next week or so.
Yeah, for high end players, I think it's fair to say that you'll see the dip during the early part of the week and then the rise.
So that's good to know. Thanks for that insight, Foot Economist.
Foot or foot?
Let's move on. Let's move on to Post, aka Mail, for our very much valued American listeners. So the first question is, I think this is going to be an interesting one for you because obviously you do a lot of trading. Jimmy at Jimmy Steamboat asks, what's the biggest market regret / biggest market success, e.g. sold a player for too little or sniped a player for too cheap, etc. Love the pod. Thanks, Jimmy. What are your thoughts?
So I've got an interesting one for this one. I'll start with the bad news. Back in, I think it was just after Black Friday, Torre Yaya Torre, got a inform card, and I was looking at. I did a comparative valuation on between Yaya Toure and Pogba. Pogba's inform and non-informed. I was comparing it to De Bruyne. I had all these metrics lined up, and I was so sure that he was going to rise in price. I had already made profit on flipping him before. I bought him at, I think it was like 250, sold him on at like 290. But then he continued to rise. He went to 340, and then I think I got greedy because I thought there was like more room for him to rise even after that. So I bought like 8 Torres at 340, and I ended up selling them all at like, I think what was like the best one sold at like 280. I mean, I took a heck of a loss on this one, and it was quite embarrassing because it was, it's very public on Twitter. People, like, everyone knew that I was doing this. And that was back when I was small enough in my Twitter following to where I would post out, who I was investing in. Every time I do an investment, I'd say like, okay, investing in Torres at this time. And that was, that was pretty brutal. But I followed it up right after that with my biggest win. And it was during the winter upgrade investment hype. I picked up I got in on Mertens, all of his informs, at like literally the best time. I timed it exactly perfectly at his lowest, where I bought, I'm trying to remember the exact prices. I bought 5 of them at 390, and then I went on and sold them in like it was like a crazy amount of hype. Like a month later at 940, which was like an unbelievable profit that I turned from that. And it was crazy because that only happened, that height in like that rise in price only happened for like 8 hours. Like, it wasn't even a full day that he was at that price. It was just someone made a video or someone posted on Twitter that he was virtually guaranteed to get upgraded during winter upgrades, and like the supply of his card on the market went from like 1 page to almost extinct. I was able to sell all of them on for a crazy profit. So yeah, that was pretty crazy.
So that really set you up, I guess, for the rest of the game.
Yeah, I was set.
It's interesting because in terms of my sort of biggest failure, I think it was actually just a bit of a mistake. In fact, I'll do 2 mistakes. It's quite funny to. I mean, I do some fairly good trading, but these 2 are kind of complete flukes, and one made me money and one didn't. One of them was accidentally listing Suka for Davor Suka when I packed him for like 100k less than he was worth, which at the time felt like quite a lot. I packed him from Weekend League rewards, so I guess it was all money I'd made. So I guess that's not a bad thing. But I sold him for 340 rather than 440. Which was really frustrating. The biggest success, which really set me up for the whole game, was when I thought Jota, the Portuguese striker, who at the time was 4-star skill striker, Portuguese, and the only good Portuguese striker basically, apart from like Ronaldo's striker card at the time. And it was when players who were 81 rated informs could actually be quite effective in the Weekend League. Yeah. So I was like, okay, he could well rise. So I bought like 10 of them for like, I think like 12-13k. Yeah. And then coincidentally that following week, for the first time, they introduced Team of the Week requirements into SBCs. Yeah. So you required a Team of the Week player. So like they were all worth 45k. Yeah. It was like unbelievable, but it really helped me out at that stage as well. So quite pleased with that. And then more recently, I've done some quite good work with like buying and selling Ronaldo. Ended up making decent profit, but that's just more because I've bought them at the right time, like just because the market fluctuations at the moment. So it's not really kind of killer trading. It's just kind of keeping an eye on prices and a bit of investing type stuff. And I've been wanting to use them anyway. So, there you go. Yeah, sometimes things work out like that, don't they?
They do. Yeah.
Well, great. I think that's pretty much wrapped up for the first half. A big half. Well, it's more than half, really, isn't it? It's like a 3/4 or something, because we've not left ourselves too much time to get into those team of the season players we want to discuss in the second half, and maybe a couple of reviews as well. If you're very good for the rest of the podcast, we'll get onto that in a second after the break. And just a little reminder: if you want to send in any of your questions or thoughts, you can do that at FUT Weekly Pod on Twitter or futweekly@mail.com. And yeah, we'll see you in a second. So welcome back. We've got quite a big team of the season to talk about.
We do.
it's a particularly valuable one. And we'll look at that in a second. I just want to quickly mention the team of the week. Also, you wanted to say that you were a big fan of what EA have done here.
I am, yeah. I mean, I like the fact that they've changed things around and aren't releasing a full team of the week of 24 players. I think it is usually. And if instead sort of decided to narrow it down and make it so that they're only putting really valuable players into the team of the week as they've done, and I'm sure you're going to point out in a second. I'm a fan of that. I think it's going to add a little bit more interest to the game as it gets a little bit longer in the tooth. So
in terms of the actual players, they've also kind of Mkhitaryan didn't have the best game. But he managed to get in there. He didn't do anything particularly bad, but I think what was it, like a 7.4 or something rating? He wasn't.
Yeah, I don't think he had any goal or assist contribution. So
but he made it in, and then Vidal made it in as well. He's just got himself into the Hullet gang actually, so that's quite nice. You also got João Moutinho and Giroud, who actually, scored a stunning goal against Switzerland. Yeah, well, worth a search if you haven't seen that already. And then Musa at right wing. Fortunately, because had he been a striker, that would have been pretty game ending for me. I probably would have just stopped playing at that point.
Mane sort of takes his spot as the ridiculous right winger from the Premier League.
Yeah, so it's not bad. It's not really worth mentioning the others, although Horace's favourite silver striker, Gudus, the Swede, is also in this as an 81 rated goal player, which is quite fun. Also, I don't know whether I might be wrong about this, that he should have been an 80 rated player rather than 81, because that's how they've been doing the upgrades, but fair play to them. They're just they're just at that point of the game where they just
do what they want.
So no, it's not bad. Like, it's not even that terrible considering what we thought it might be this team of the week. But it's going to make things at least a little bit more interesting heading into a time when we won't have the team of the season. And actually, quickly before we move on, that Mkhitaryan card, I posted his stats on Twitter. He'd make an excellent wide centre mid player because he's actually with Anchor got excellent defending.
Really?
Like 91 interceptions or something. So
wow.
Yeah, really, really solid. But let's move on to the real deal, the team of the season. I mean, it is really good. There's a lot of really good players. There's only a few which are kind of so suspect that you wouldn't use them.
Right.
Pedro Leon. I mean, what is he doing?
Bruno Cruz,
he doesn't even have any redeeming stats. It's not like he's got like ridiculous dribbling or strength or like so apart from him, it all looks really good. There are lots of players that I could see myself using, a lot of kind of top tier players, and even some of the kind of players you wouldn't have thought of as top tier. Someone like Iago Aspas, his stats look incredible. 90 pace, 95 dribbling, 95 shooting, and 80 physical with 89 passing. So some really good ones, and a few players who are going to fill gaps in that league. Really, really poor showing from midfielders in that league. There's no kind of effective players, really, I'd say. But the Nzonzi with his 67 pace now, looking kind of more usable. It's obviously ridiculous in terms of physical dribbling, shooting, defending, passing, etc. Another kind of very usable midfield option for sure in Manu Trigueros. He's 4-star skills, but he's actually got a really well-rounded card. 79 pace, 72 defending, 91 dribbling, 90 passing. So he's the kind of player that could work as a box-to-box midfielder with 4-star skills, someone that they've kind of lacked in that league. And also worth mentioning Casimiro, who I think you were saying just looks crazy.
Unbelievable. Yeah, I think there's a very solid argument saying that he is now the best CDM in the game, better than Vieira, better than Petit, better than really anyone else you could think of. And I think that's, his card looks insane.
I mean, he's one of those players that you almost like. There's not much you can do apart from boost his pace. He's got 99 long shots, 99 shot power, 99 stand tackle, 99 deceptions, 99 ball control, 99 reactions, 99 jumping, 99 aggression, 97 stamina, 99 short passing, 99 long passing, 99 free kick accuracy, 91 vision. So when you actually use like a full pace boost chemistry style, there's so much stat wastage on the other stats. It's just ridiculous. I'd almost say you kind of would only really want to use Hunter on him because there's just nothing else that you would want to boost. So really great card. I quite like to try him out, and at 650k it's really not that bad when you sort of compare that to Vieira for a mil or whatever he is.
Right, yeah, exactly. Oh, and another thing that I wanted to point out is that much to the dismay of the Team of the Year Messi owners, Messi's team of the season is actually better in stats. His team of the year, which is, sort of backstab to the team of the year others, but I guess it happens.
Yeah. And it's quite interesting because that's something that wasn't expected at all, and maybe just something that EA decided to do just to spice things up a bit. So
yeah,
quite interesting. Another player who I think is worth a mention is Yannick Carrasco. I mean, what a card that is! No, you haven't heard anyone talk about him, but wow! I mean, he's got 98 pace, and he's got if you look at his stats with something like finisher, he gets 83 strength and has 99 shot power and long shots, 95 finishing. Really, really kind of solid passing stats, and obviously ridiculous dribbling and 99 agility, as well as acceptable balance. So yeah, I mean, he just looks crazy. A couple of other players that I'd just like to give a mention to: Felipe Luis, possibly one of the best left backs in the game. Having used Team of the Year Marcelo, Team of the Year Marcelo is in no way the perfect player, and I think Felipe Luis could be up there. Jan Oblak, is it Jan? I feel like it is. Yeah, it is. By far the best keeper in the league. Griezmann obviously looking great. There's so many good players, and even Isco, he doesn't necessarily play that well when you use him, but wow, his stats, he could actually be quite a decent midfielder.
Yeah.
I've
heard that Ronaldo guy looks pretty good too.
Yeah, him. Neymar, I've heard, is kind of okay. He's doing some decent work in the Spanish league, from what I've heard.
Yeah.
And Suarez, not sure, probably
decent
okay as well.
Yeah, 9 out of 10.
Yeah. So some great players. I think there's only so much you can say.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's getting to the point where these players are so good that they're going into what chemistry styles should we put on Messi? It doesn't really matter. You gonna boost his defending, or what are you gonna do? So yeah,
and many of them it's kind of obvious. You got to boost their strength, because they're Messi's not so
right. Yeah, exactly.
So strong. So you go with architect or finisher or whatever. So so I think we kind of wrapped up on that. I'd like to quickly give a shout out to the Portuguese league team of the season. Is obviously the other most recent team of the season we've had. I think there are a few players which are worth mentioning. One which has been extinct for quite some time as well, Nelson Semedo. And then in terms of other players that I actually think are kind of worth giving a go, Pizzi, the midfielder, his inform was actually very good, and this card with his 4-star skills and actually okay defending looks like quite good as your kind of more attacking centre mid role. And then I've used Daniel Pereira quite a lot, and I've mentioned him before, and he's very good. So I think there aren't that many more kind of players in that are kind of going to make it into a weekend league side. And in terms of a goalkeeper who I think is one of the better team of the season goalkeepers so far, possibly Edison, I've heard very good things about.
Played against him a number of times. Very solid.
And also the other thing is that he would link nicely with your Marquinhos if you manage to get him. In terms of this upcoming week, in terms of team of the season, we have got a winnable player, Spanish centre-back, I think. It's Nacho Fernandez, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
He looks decent, got 80 pace. We'll have a perfect link to Sergio Ramos. If you're looking to get him into a team, I'd probably pick up Carvajal now. If he could go up in price quite a bit, because he's a perfect link to the centre-back that a lot of people will end up owning by the end of...
Right.
So finally, it's quite a process, this. We've got the team of the season Mexican League, and there's not any particularly good players in there. There's a couple of decent wingers, Lozano and Sosa, and then you've got Ruidaz, who is obviously an excellent silver. I've mentioned before, he's got himself an 87 rated card with 89 pace, 90 shooting and 88 dribbling, who looks very good, but he's not particularly strong, so that could be a bit of a problem. And Gignac could actually be quite good as well. So yeah, some decent options, some very good silvers as well, if you're into that kind of thing. A particular player called Pineda with 90 pace, 84 dribbling, 76 shooting, 70 defending, 74 physical and 82 passing. It's got to be worth a go. He's quite expensive though, as are many of these silvers actually, has to be said. But let's move on. We've got our reviews coming up. I think you've got something a bit different, because I know you kind of got your team set now, so there's probably less variation in the players you're using. But who's the player you wanted to bring up? I think it was someone that you've played a few times and was quite good against you.
Yeah, quite good, I think, is a understatement. He goes by the name of Team Season Lacazette. He is a nightmare to defend against. He is ridiculously strong on the ball, and his low center of gravity makes him really tricky to get your defender's shoulder on him. He's very slippery. Like he's very, I don't know, something about him makes it really difficult to defend against him. I remember there was an opponent who scored a goal on me where he did an over-the-top through ball, and without letting it hit the ground, he flicked it up, like did one of the right stick flicks, flicked it up over my Smalling, who then tried to turn around and body him. It didn't work. Zabadouise shifted over, sort of trying to save the day. He tried to body him and then actually ended up sort of doing that animation where he like fell back and sort of fell over. And then Lacazette hit it to the far post across the goal, and from the angle that he was at, he was sort of like towards the edge of the 18, and my De Gea literally didn't even move. Like he just watched the shot go into the far corner, which is rather stunning. But yeah, he's a really good card. He's expensive as well, but if you have the coins to facilitate buying that sort of player, he's definitely someone I would look into.
Nice. Yeah, no, I'm kind of tempted to buy him, but he's like as expensive as like informed striker Ronaldo, so it just seems huge expense to go for at this stage. The player that I was actually going to review is someone I've talked about him just earlier, and I just couldn't believe how good he was. His stats are amazing, so you kind of expect it, but yeah, Nelson Semedo, team of the season. Oh, what a player. He's got ridiculous pace, which doesn't really need boosting, 98 on the card, and then he's got default 99 agility. If you put backbone on him, he gets 99 standing tackle and 99 sliding tackle. He's got 99 stamina. He's got 99 jumping, 99 short passing. He's actually got 98 as standard, 80 long passing with backbone, and then he's basically got 90 plus on all his dribbling stats. He's got 3-star skills, 3-star weak foot. Currently extinct, but it was fairly straightforward for me to snipe him. I don't know whether that was just luck, but and he was in packs at the time, but you should be able to pick him up. And I don't think he'll be too much more than 100k just because he's not that easy to get into a team. There's not many good Portuguese centre-backs, and the centre-backs in his league aren't the best either. But what I was really surprised about him is, he seems more of an attacking right back, but actually his positioning was excellent. He stayed in position when I wanted him to. He came up as an option when I didn't, and he also had really, really good passing. He could through ball down the wing quite effectively, but he's also capable of like doing a run into the box, beating a few players, which is kind of something you don't expect from a right back. And his pace does really feel very good, and you can boost his strength more and pace more with something like Anchor. And also I think he's one of those players that if you bought him and you can get him into a team, he's worth way more than 100k because he is like a top tier right back rather than a 100k right back. But the fact he's in that league means that maybe he's not. Price isn't representing him as such, so he would be up there with the Kyle Walkers, the Carvajal's. I've used the team of the season Carvajal. He's also very good, but Semedo just for me offered that little bit more. And if you're playing a 5 at the back, which I know a few people have been enjoying after I recommended it, enjoying maybe not quite the right word for a sweaty weekend league side, but you know what I mean. It's certainly the kind of player who will be your kind of game-ending right back, if you like. Yeah, sounds awesome. Cool. Well, I think that wraps us up for this week. The quite a huge podcast in a way. We've had a lot of interesting FIFA 18 chat, and we'll look forward to hearing more about that. If you've had any thoughts on what you've heard today, feel free to contact us at FUTweeklyPod on Twitter or FUTweekly@mail.com. Jamie is at @FUT_economist, I believe, on Twitter, and you can contact him there as well. But I think all that remains to be said is thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next week. Bye. Yep. See ya. If you haven't already, you can subscribe to the podcast through the Apple and Android apps or wherever you get your podcasts.